The auction hall floated in deep space, far from any sun that cared. Its walls were made of cold silver metal, polished so clean that faces reflected back like ghosts. Bright white lights shone down on a wide stage, where chains lay scattered across the floor. The air smelled of fear, oil, and credits. This was not a place for mercy. Creatures from many worlds filled the seats. Some were tall and sharp, others round and soft, but their eyes were the same, calculating, hungry. They were not here to help anyone, they were here to buy. At the very back of the hall stood a human. His name was Ethan Cole. He did not sit like the others. Sitting hurt too much. Instead, he leaned against a railing, holding a metal cane in his right hand. His left hand pressed against his chest, where a deep, burning pain lived every second of his life. His breathing was slow and uneven. Sweat covered his forehead even though the hall was cold. Ethan was sick, very sick. Doctors had told him the truth weeks ago. His heart was failing. The treatments were expensive, painful, and only delayed the end. He had sold almost everything he owned just to stay alive this long. His ship was gone. His home was gone. His future was almost gone. Yet he was here. On the stage, the announcer's voice echoed loudly. Next lot, 2 Virelian juveniles. Guards pushed forward 2 small figures. They were alien girls, clearly sisters. The older one looked no more than 8 years old by human standards. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes large and glowing with fear. She stood in front of the smaller one, spreading her thin arms wide as if her body alone could protect her sister from the entire room. The younger sister was shaking. Her small hands clutched the back of the older one's clothing. Tears ran down her face, dripping onto the metal floor. "Please," the older sister whispered in broken galactic common, "please don't separate us." The announcer did not react. "Virelians are rare," he continued calmly. "Highly intelligent, emotional bonding strong, sold separately they bring higher profit." At those words, the younger sister let out a soft cry. "No, no," she said again and again. Ethan felt something twist painfully inside him. It was not his heart this time. It was a memory. He remembered holding his own sister's hand in a hospital room on Earth. Remembered promising her he would stay, even though he knew he couldn't. Remembered the fear in her eyes when machines started to beep faster. Ethan swallowed hard. The bidding began. 5,000 credits. 7,000. 10,000. Numbers flew through the air like weapons. A tall alien with dark, scaled skin stood up near the front row. His eyes were narrow, his mouth curved in a cruel smile. His kind was known across many systems. "Dravik. Slavers. I bid 20,000, the Dravik said calmly, "for the smaller one." The room buzzed with approval. The older sister screamed. She dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms tightly around the younger one. "No, please, take me instead. She is little, she needs me." Some laughed, some looked away. No one stopped the auction. Ethan's chest burned. His vision blurred for a moment, and he had to grip his cane harder to stay standing. Every part of his body told him to leave, to rest, to save his remaining strength. But his feet did not move. Slowly, painfully, Ethan raised his hand. "I bid," he said. His voice was weak, but it carried. The hall fell quiet. Heads turned, eyes focused on the human at the back. "I bid 21,000, Ethan continued, "for both sisters." A wave of whispers rushed through the crowd. "A human. Together. Impossible." The Dravik turned and stared at him with open disbelief. "You," the alien said with a low laugh, "you are wasting credits, human." Ethan met his gaze. His legs shook, but his eyes were steady. "They stay together," Ethan said simply. The older sister looked back at him. Their eyes met across the hall. For the first time since stepping onto that stage, she felt a small spark of hope. The Dravik's smile widened, sharp and cold. "Then let us see," he said, "how much a dying human values strangers." The announcer raised his hand again. Bidding continues. And in that moment the real battle began. The air in the auction hall felt heavier now. Every bid that passed between Ethan and the Dravik made it harder for him to breathe. His chest ached, sharp and deep, but he kept his hand raised. He would not back down, not now, not when two small lives depended on him. The older Virelian sister crouched slightly, shielding the younger one behind her. Her large, glowing eyes never left Ethan. Even though she could not understand his words, she understood the meaning behind them: protection, safety, someone who cared. 22,000, Ethan said, his voice hoarse. His legs shook, but he forced them to hold his weight. Every inch of his body screamed to stop. Every bone, every fiber was screaming that he had spent everything, that he could barely move without pain. The Dravik hissed, 25,000 for the smaller one, she is mine. The little sister's whimpers grew louder. She buried her head into her sister's shoulder. The older sister's hands trembled as she gripped the younger one tightly. No, take me instead, I beg you, don't separate us. The auction hall remained indifferent. Some aliens murmured excitedly. Others watched coldly, calculating profits and gains. To them, these children were objects, nothing more than commodities. Their cries were like background noise. Ethan felt something in him crack. His chest hurt so much that he nearly doubled over. The pain was unbearable, a constant stabbing that reminded him of every day he had left in this life. But he did not stop. He could not stop. 30,000, he whispered almost to himself. Then he raised his voice, stronger this time. 30,000, both of them stay together. The Dravik's eyes narrowed. Human, do you not understand? You cannot win, your body is weak, your credits are limited, you are foolish. Ethan's hand shook violently and he gritted his teeth. I don't care, they will not be separated. The older sister's breath caught in her throat. She did not know what human meant. She did not know that humans were fragile creatures who could not survive like others, but somehow she knew he was different. He would fight, even if it hurt him, even if it cost him everything. The Dravik stepped closer to the edge of the stage, looming over Ethan as if his mere presence could intimidate him. 40,000, the Dravik growled. End this madness, human. Give me the child. You cannot survive this fight. Ethan's lips trembled, but he did not look away. He gripped his cane tighter, leaning slightly for support. Pain shot through his chest and down his arms, but his resolve burned hotter. 50,000, both of them, together. The hall went silent. Even the announcer's voice faltered for a moment. Aliens whispered among themselves. Humans were rare in these auctions, and one standing up to a Dravik was almost unheard of. The older sister watched in awe. This small human, weak and fragile, was standing tall against one of the galaxy's most feared slavers. She felt her heart swell with hope she had not known since being taken from her home. The younger sister peeked out from behind her sister. Her small hands trembled as she reached toward Ethan. Are you helping us?" she asked softly. Ethan nodded, managing a small, strained smile. "I'm helping, you won't be alone." The Dravik's eyes flared with anger. He slammed a clawed hand onto the auction table. 60,000, you think you can outbid me, human? You will regret this. Ethan's knees shook. Sweat poured down his face. He could feel his energy draining, his life slipping slowly through his fingers. Yet he lifted his hand again. His voice was weak, but every word was filled with determination. "All I have left," Ethan said. 70,000, both sisters, together, no one separates them. Gasps echoed through the hall, heads turned. Aliens whispered in disbelief. Humans were known for endurance, for spirit, for stubbornness, but this was beyond anything anyone had seen. The older sister fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. The younger one clung to her, hiding her face against her sister's shoulder, listening to the sound of a human fighting for them like a shield, like a wall, like a family. The Dravik stepped back, his anger visible, his pride wounded. "Impossible," he growled. "You cannot win against me, human, you are nothing." Ethan's gaze did not waver. His chest burned. Every breath was a battle, but he stood taller than ever. "Then call me nothing. I will fight anyway. I will not let fear or greed decide their lives." In that cold, indifferent hall, in the middle of creatures who only saw money and power, one weak human stood strong. And for two small sisters trembling on the stage, that human was more than strong. He was hope. The battle had only begun, and in this moment the universe had never felt smaller, yet somehow more full of possibility. Ethan's body screamed in pain, but he did not move. His chest burned with a fire that made each breath sharp and shallow. The cane he held was slick with sweat, but he tightened his grip anyway. He had no right to stop now. Two little lives rested on his stubbornness, and he would not let a cruel alien tear them apart. The older sister crouched protectively over the younger one. Her tiny arms were wrapped around her sister as though her own body could shield her from the world. Her glowing eyes reflected fear, hope, and disbelief all at once. She whispered something to the younger sister, words soft and trembling but full of love. "We have someone. He will help us." Ethan lifted his hand again, even as a sharp pain stabbed through his ribs. He cleared his throat. 80,000, he said, each word a battle, for both sisters together. The Dravik's scaly face twisted in anger. "Foolish human," the alien hissed. "You are weak. Your body cannot last the day. Your credits are nearly gone. You cannot win." Ethan's lips curled into a small, strained smile. "I don't care. I cannot. Let them be separated." His voice trembled with pain, but the determination behind it burned brighter than any fear. The announcer looked uneasy. "Sir, your body, you might collapse. You could be putting your life at risk." Ethan shook his head slowly. "I've lived long enough to know fear. This is worth it." The room seemed to pause. Even the Dravik faltered for a fraction of a second, studying the human before him. Ethan's face was pale, his hair damp with sweat. He looked fragile, broken almost. But his eyes held fire, a stubborn, impossible fire. The older sister felt something stir inside her chest. Hope. She had not felt it in weeks. She looked at Ethan, and for the first time she believed that someone outside her species could care enough to fight, even when it hurt. The Dravik slammed his clawed hand on the table. 90,000, he roared. "You will die for this, human." Ethan's legs buckled slightly. He gritted his teeth and straightened himself, gripping his cane with white-knuckled determination. 100,000, he said. Each word trembled from both fear and pain. "Both sisters together. No one separates them." Gasps filled the hall. Aliens murmured in disbelief. Humans were stubborn creatures, yes. But no one had ever seen one push themselves so far, risking life itself, simply for kindness. The younger sister peeked out from behind her sister. Her small hands trembled as she whispered, He's really helping us." Ethan gave her a tired, soft smile. "Yes," he said, "I'm here, you're not alone." The Dravik's pride twisted into rage. "This is impossible," he shouted. "No human can match my credits. You are a weak, foolish creature. You will lose everything." Ethan's vision blurred. His body felt as though it were splitting in two. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat was agony. And yet somehow he stayed upright. He lifted his hand once more. His voice was weak, almost a whisper. "All I have," he said. "All I've saved, 72,000 credits, both sisters together. No one separates them." The room fell silent. Even the murmurs faded. The announcer's mechanical voice wavered. The AI scanned Ethan and blinked warnings. "Buyer health critical. Suggest cessation." But Ethan ignored it. His eyes never left the sisters. He saw their fear, their hope, their fragile little hands clutching each other. And in that moment he remembered all the times in his life he had done nothing while others suffered. This was his chance to do something, to matter. The older sister pressed her face against her sister's shoulder, tears flowing freely. She whispered into the little one's ear, "He's fighting for us, really fighting." The Dravik's claws twitched. His anger and frustration were growing with every heartbeat. "You will regret this," he hissed. "You are nothing." Ethan's voice barely rose above a whisper, but it carried through the hall. "Call me nothing if you wish, but I will not let fear or greed decide their lives." For the first time in that hall filled with greed and cruelty, a quiet energy shifted. The other bidders leaned back. Some whispered to themselves. Some stared in disbelief. No one had ever seen a human do this. No one had ever seen someone risk everything simply to protect others. The older sister took a shaky breath. She looked at Ethan with eyes wide and full of trust. Somehow she understood him. He might be dying, he might be weak, but in this moment he was stronger than anyone she had ever seen. The younger sister peeked out again and whispered softly, He's our hero." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. His body ached, his life was fragile, and the room was full of threats and cruelty. But the warmth in his chest, the warmth of doing the right thing, made him feel alive in a way he hadn't in years. This was not just a battle for credits. This was a battle for love, for family, for hope. And Ethan Cole, a human who should have quit, was not going to stop until the sisters stayed together. The room had grown tense, almost suffocating. Every heartbeat of Ethan's echoed painfully in his chest. Sweat streamed down his face, soaking his thin shirt while his legs threatened to buckle under the weight of his own stubbornness. Each breath felt like fire in his lungs, but he stayed upright. He had promised himself he would not fail. Not now. Not when two tiny lives depended on him. The older Virelian sister crouched lower, protecting the younger one behind her. Her large eyes glimmered with tears, reflecting hope that she barely dared to feel. The younger sister trembled against her sibling, small fingers clutching her sister's arm, seeking safety, seeking love. Their trust in Ethan, though silent, was absolute. He could feel it, and it gave him strength. The Dravik's scaly hand slammed the bidding table again. 100,000, he roared, venom in his voice. You cannot survive this, human. Give up before you die. Ethan's vision blurred. Pain sliced through his ribs and chest like knives. His legs shook violently, threatening to collapse. He gritted his teeth, pressing the cane into the floor to steady himself. Every part of his body screamed to stop, to surrender, to save what little life he had left. And yet he could not. Not when the older sister's trembling arms shielded the younger. Not when the little girl's eyes held more trust than he had ever earned in a lifetime. I bid all I have, Ethan whispered, voice hoarse, choking on the effort. 72,000, both sisters together. A hush fell over the hall. The announcer blinked, the AI scanning Ethan in rapid pulses. Buyer health critical, high risk. Dravik's mouth twisted in rage. Impossible, he hissed. No human can match me. You are weak. You are dying. You will regret this. Ethan's chest heaved. Each breath a battle, each heartbeat a drum of defiance. He met Dravik's gaze and smiled faintly. I might be weak, I might be dying, but I will not let greed and cruelty decide their lives. You may call me nothing, but I will fight anyway. The older sister's eyes widened. Her tiny chest rose and fell rapidly as she clung to her little sister. He's really fighting for us, she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. The younger one peeked out shyly, voice trembling. He's protecting us. The hall shifted uncomfortably. Aliens whispered among themselves, stunned. Some leaned forward, curiosity replacing their usual cold indifference. Humans rarely dared to fight for something bigger than themselves. Humans rarely risked life for strangers, but here was one, frail, fragile, and completely determined. The Dravik slammed his claw onto the table again. 120,000, he shouted. You will lose everything. You are nothing. Ethan felt a sharp stab of pain run through his chest. Sweat blurred his vision. His legs buckled slightly and his grip on the cane faltered. He closed his eyes for a second, picturing his sister back on Earth, the only family he had lost. He remembered her small hands, her trembling face, her whispered pleas. He had failed her then. He would not fail again. Opening his eyes, he looked at the two sisters before him. Their fear, their hope, their tiny bodies pressed together, they were worth everything. Worth every ache, every heartbeat, every drop of blood left in him. I will not let them be separated, he said, voice cracking but unyielding. 72,000, both of them together, no one touches them. A silence so deep it was almost holy fell across the hall. The Dravik's claws twitched in frustration. His pride burned, his ego wounded. Aliens around the hall murmured in disbelief. This human, weak and fragile, had done the impossible. He had risked everything to protect two children. The older sister's tears fell freely now. She pressed her face against the younger one's shoulder. He's our hero, she whispered. The younger sister peeked from behind her sister, tiny hands clutching her shoulder, eyes wide with trust and wonder. Ethan swayed slightly, exhausted beyond measure, but he held his head high. Pain radiated through every part of him, but he had won something greater than life or death. He had won hope. He had shown that even in a cruel, indifferent galaxy, there could be courage, love, and compassion. The Dravik hissed, fury and disbelief twisting his face. "You cannot survive this." Ethan gave a small, weary smile, voice soft yet steady. "I survive enough to see them safe. That is enough." For the first time, silence filled the hall not with fear, but with awe. Aliens who had never known kindness stared in shock. Two tiny sisters, trembling and scared, clung together, protected by a human who should have quit long ago. And in that moment, Ethan understood something simple but profound. Strength was not measured by size, speed, or firepower. Strength was measured by love, by courage, by the willingness to fight for others when all else seemed lost. He had reached his breaking point, but even at the edge of death, he stood taller than anyone else in the hall. And for the sisters, the fire of hope burned brighter than any fear. Ethan collapsed the moment the auction ended. His legs gave way and the cane fell from his trembling hands. Pain shot through his chest like lightning and every breath burned. For a moment, the hall seemed to freeze. All the noise, the whispers, the calculations, the excitement faded into a hollow silence. The older sister screamed, rushing forward, trying to hold him up. "No, don't fall, you promised." Her glowing eyes shone with desperation. The younger sister clung to her, small hands pressing against her sister's arm, looking at Ethan with wide, terrified eyes. Medical drones immediately moved in, their mechanical arms scanning and stabilizing Ethan's weakened body. His heartbeat was dangerously low, and the AI warned that he might not survive the night. Yet he smiled faintly, even as sweat poured down his face. I kept my promise," he whispered, voice weak but filled with warmth. The sisters could not fully understand the words, but they felt the meaning. For the first time since arriving at the auction, they were safe. Not as property, not as objects to be sold. Safe as siblings together. One of the Galactic Child Protection officers approached cautiously, reviewing the release papers Ethan had signed moments before. "Sir, you didn't buy them for yourself." The human's words were weak, trembling. "You gave everything you had to save them." Ethan nodded, closing his eyes for a moment. His breath was shallow, ragged, and painful. "Family shouldn't be owned," he whispered. "They belong together always." The older sister slowly knelt beside him, her small hands trembling as she pressed them over his. She looked into his weary eyes and whispered, "You're our hero, even if you don't feel it." The younger sister peeked over her sister's shoulder, her tiny face full of wonder and gratitude. Ethan allowed a faint smile to cross his pale face. "You too, survive," he said softly. "Be strong for each other." Every word felt like a weight lifted from him, every syllable costing him more energy than he had in his frail body. But seeing their relief, seeing the trust and hope in their glowing eyes, he felt warmth he hadn't known in years. The medical drone stabilized him, moving him gently onto a cot. His breathing was shallow, and his body trembled uncontrollably, but he stayed conscious just long enough to see the sisters safely escorted away. Their hands clasped together, their small forms still trembling but safe, their eyes never leaving him as they were led to the Galactic Child Protection officers. The older sister reached into her small pouch and pulled out a crystal pendant. She pressed it into Ethan's hand. "For you," she whispered softly, her voice shaky, "so you won't feel alone." Ethan's fingers closed weakly around the pendant. It was simple, but the warmth of the gesture pierced him more than any medicine ever could. He held it to his chest, feeling a connection he had almost forgotten, connection, love, hope. For the first time in years, he felt alive despite the pain. Hours passed. The drones monitored his failing heart. Pain radiated through his ribs, and his body was exhausted beyond human endurance. Still, he whispered words of encouragement to the sisters as they disappeared down the hall, telling them to be brave, to stay together, to never give up. The older sister looked back one last time. Her glowing eyes met Ethan's tired gaze. She nodded, understanding that this human had given them more than life. He had given them hope, safety, and family. She whispered softly, "Thank you always." The younger sister clung tightly to her sister. Her tiny voice, trembling and soft, echoed Ethan's sentiment, though she did not fully understand the words. Thank you for staying with us. Ethan closed his eyes finally, a faint smile on his lips. He had risked everything, his remaining life, his body, his strength, to protect two innocent beings. And in that small, simple act, he had done something no one else in the galaxy dared. He had fought with his heart. The hall slowly returned to its usual noise, but something had changed. The auctioneer's voice sounded hollow. The Dravik scowled, unable to comprehend how a dying human had outbid him and protected the innocent. Aliens whispered in awe and disbelief. Something intangible had shifted. Ethan's body was fragile, weak, and failing. But in those final hours, he had shown the universe what humans could do when they refused to look away, when they chose love over fear and hope over greed. He had given life where cruelty sought to take it. And for the sisters, the human who should have been nothing, the human who was suffering, became their guardian angel. The memory of his sacrifice, of his courage, would stay with them forever, a warmth that could not be sold, broken, or taken. Even in the face of death, Ethan had given them the most precious gift of all, each other safe and together. Word of what Ethan had done spread faster than anyone could have imagined. At first, it was just whispers in small corners of space stations and marketplaces. Traders and travelers spoke quietly, not daring to believe that a human, so fragile, so short-lived, could outbid a cruel Dravik slaver and protect two innocent alien children. Then the story grew louder. Screens across multiple systems replayed the auction, showing Ethan, pale and sweating, standing firm against a sea of greed and cruelty. Humans and aliens alike watched as he risked everything, his weak body trembling, his hands shaking, and yet his eyes blazing with determination. He had no weapon, no army, no power, only his heart and his refusal to look away. Galactic forums erupted. Why would a human do this? One alien asked. They gain nothing, another said. They risk death for strangers. A Virelian elder finally replied on one of the forums. Her voice was calm, but it carried weight across the galaxy. Humans believe some things are worth more than life. Some values cannot be measured in credits or power. Some love refuses to be broken. People began to talk differently about humans. Traders who had once laughed at their fragility now spoke in hushed respect. Children's advocates cited Ethan's courage as an example of what compassion could achieve. Stories of cruelty in auctions were challenged. More protections were demanded. Laws slowly began to change, inspired by the bravery of one small, dying man. Meanwhile, the two Virelian sisters settled with distant relatives, finally safe. They were free from chains, free from fear, and most importantly, together. Every night they spoke of the human who had saved them, his words, his courage, and the warmth he had shown them. They did not have much, but they had each other, and they carried Ethan's memory like a small, glowing flame in their hearts. Even among humans, Ethan became a quiet legend. People told stories of him in hushed tones, of a man who chose kindness over greed, love over fear, and hope over despair. To some, he was proof that humanity's true power was not in weapons or technology, but in the willingness to act when others would not, even when everything seemed lost. The Dravik never forgave the loss. He seethed at the memory of a weak human who outbid him, who dared to defy him in front of the galaxy. Yet even he could not erase the tale. Every time he tried to continue his cruel auctions, whispers of Ethan's courage followed him, reminding everyone that compassion could outshine cruelty. The sisters grew up hearing stories of humans not as weak creatures, but as beings capable of impossible courage. "He gave us hope," the older sister said once, eyes shining. "He risked everything, even his life, to keep me and my sister together." The younger sister nodded, holding her sister's hand tightly. "He loved us, even though we were strangers, even though he was hurting. He saved us when no one else would." Back on Earth, news reached a few human communities as well. Those who heard it were proud, not of war or conquest, but of something far more powerful. One human, weak, dying, and suffering, had shown the galaxy what humans were truly capable of: courage, empathy, and love that refused to surrender. The story of Ethan Cole became a quiet revolution. Slowly, laws changed. Child auctions were banned in more systems. Slavery became harder to practice. One human's choice, small and personal, had rippled across countless worlds. And in the hearts of the sisters, in their laughter, in their safety, and in the quiet moments when they remembered the human who had saved them, his legacy lived. Not as money spent, not as a battle won, but as a light that refused to fade. Even as the galaxy continued its chaos, one truth became undeniable. Humans could rise above suffering, rise above cruelty, and rise above fear. And sometimes all it took was one human refusing to look away. Years passed, but the memory of Ethan Cole never faded for the two Virelian sisters. They had grown taller, stronger, and wiser, yet they still carried the warmth of that one incredible human in their hearts. He had given them something far more valuable than money or freedom. He had given them each other, safe and unbroken, and a lesson that courage and love could change the universe. On a quiet planet far from the auction halls of the past, the sisters stood before a small, unassuming stone. It was smooth, simple, and unmarked, except for a single name etched deeply: Ethan Cole. They had built it together, a tribute to the human who had sacrificed everything for them. The older sister knelt, brushing her hand across the stone. Tears shone in her large, glowing eyes. "He was so small," she whispered, her voice trembling, "so fragile, and yet he was stronger than anyone we have ever known." The younger sister placed a wreath of native flowers at the base of the stone. "He fought for us," she said softly. "Even when he was suffering, even when he could barely stand, he didn't give up." They both looked to the sky, remembering the day Ethan had stood against the cruel Dravik. They remembered his pale face, the sweat on his brow, the shaking hands that had somehow held firm to a promise of protection. They remembered how his voice, though weak, had carried across the auction hall with determination that defied fear, pain, and death. Ethan's story had not ended with that auction. It had spread across the galaxy, inspiring humans and aliens alike. Laws had changed. Cruelty had been challenged. The hearts of beings who had never believed in hope had begun to understand that even a single life could make a difference. And yet, for the sisters, Ethan's legacy was personal. It was not about fame or stories on screens. It was about the warmth that lingered in their hearts, the courage they had inherited, and the quiet knowledge that someone had loved them so fiercely that he had given everything he had left. The older sister knelt and pressed her forehead against the stone. "We owe everything to him," she said, voice breaking. "Because of him, we are alive. Because of him, we are together." The younger one hugged her tightly. "I wish we could have thanked him properly," she said. "I wish he knew how much we love him." In a way, they did. The pendant he had held during the auction still rested around their necks, small reminders of the bond he had created. They carried it everywhere, a symbol that love and courage could endure beyond pain, beyond distance, and even beyond life itself. Though Ethan had passed away, the universe remembered him in ways he could never have imagined. Children told stories of the human who refused to turn away from suffering. Leaders spoke of him as an example of integrity and compassion. Even those who had once been cruel, like the Dravik, could not erase the story of a dying man who had stood against greed and cruelty simply to protect the innocent. The sisters turned to each other, holding hands and smiling despite the tears. "We will live," the older one said softly. "We will make a life worthy of his sacrifice." The younger sister nodded. "And we will tell everyone about the human who loved, who fought, and who refused to look away." Above them, the twin suns of their new home planet rose slowly, casting golden light across the stone. It seemed to shine brighter than any other in the sky, as if honoring the human who had given everything he had for love. And in that moment, the sisters understood something deeper than gratitude. They understood that true strength was not measured in wealth, weapons, or fear. It was measured in courage, in selflessness, in the refusal to surrender when others choose cruelty. Ethan Cole had been weak in body. He had been suffering, but he had been the strongest being the sisters had ever known. They would carry his legacy forever, in their hearts, in their actions, and in the story that would echo across the galaxy. A human had shown the universe the power of love, and it had changed everything. HFY Milky Sparkles,